Welcome back to Spitballin Cards. In today's video, we're talking about numbers 10 through 6 on the MLB Top 100 and what needs to happen with their cards in order for them to go up in 2025. In this episode, you have me, Scott, we have Bill, we have Chris, and we have Ty. It's great to have you all here. Thanks for being here. Jeff will be back next episode, and you can watch him on Thursdays on Blabmouth Slapman. But let's just jump into this. So number 10, we're going to go 10 through 6, is Gunnar Henderson. What needs to happen in 2025 for Gunnar Henderson cards to go up? A little bit of background on Gunnar. He is on the, well, he's not on the IL technically because it hasn't started yet, but he has an oblique issue, which is never a good thing as a hitter, and they are hard to heal. And so that's a concern heading into the season. It could be nothing or it could be something. But what needs to happen to Gunnar? What do you think, Chris?
I would say the Orioles have got to make another playoff run. I mean, he was great last year. His first half was absolutely incredible, and then he faded a little bit, which can happen, to younger players. So a little more consistency in the second half, and I think we're looking at just an absolute monster, out of the shortstop position there. So I would say, yeah, two things. One, a better second half, and two, Orioles remaining contention.
You're absolutely right, though. He was very good last year. I remember we did like a player draft. We should go back and look at the results of that, by the way.
We should.
I need to do that one of these days. But Phil, I remember he was taking his pick, and Ty and I both assumed the shortstop he was taking was Gunnar Henderson. He took Bobby Witt, and Ty and I were both perplexed a little bit, and Phil was right, because then after that, Gunnar wasn't very good. When I say not very good, like his first half was a 956, 287 guy. Second half, he only had 9 home runs versus 28 in the first half with a 799 OPS. So you're absolutely right, Chris. That's the case. What do you think, Phil? What do you think of Gunnar?
Yeah, so last year, the season he had was incredible. He's a good defender. He's a good base runner. He put up an 8 F-WAR. So the full season stats were still really good, even if he did fade a little bit. But that wasn't good enough for top 3 in American League MVP voting. He's 23 years old with a 13.6 F-WAR, and I think somebody like Scott, or not saying you would do it, but others might look at him versus Witt and be like, wow, he's literally 1 year younger with a similar career WAR. So he might be a better buy than Bobby Witt. And I think you would be foolish in saying that, because at this point in both of their careers, hype is more important than the long-term outlook. Hype is going to be more important in driving their values in the short term than their WAR trajectory. I love the OPS and walk rate. But not sure if the great but not elite speed and the great but not elite defense can make him like a number one guy in the hobby. But maybe he doesn't need to be, right? Because he's not there already. But is he going to be able to put up a season that matches 281 average and 37 bombs? Because if he doesn't, he might not sniff top 3 in the MVP list again. And there's only so much room in the hobby spotlight. So this is I don't think we've ever talked about this on the show, but values aren't really linear to performance. It's not really a fair system. What I mean by saying that is you don't need to be twice as good as someone to sell for 2x their prices. You only need to be about 20% better than them to sell for 2x them, right? Yeah. The way that values are distributed and dollars are distributed, it's not a perfectly linear system. So he could be a stud, maybe egg on my face. Last year, first full season, was it? No, second full season. 155 WRC plus, 20% home run to fly ball rate, which actually isn't too different than his first 2 years. So maybe he's just really undervalued still. I will say that Ty and I were the high guys on Gunnar at the beginning of last year versus it was either you two or maybe Jeff was involved too.
I don't think I wasn't low on Gunnar.
Yeah, Jeff and I were not high enough on Gunnar. Jeff and I have 0 Gunnar Henderson cards.
I took 2 strays from Phil, one for liking Gunnar and then one for not liking Gunnar in that same monologue.
You liked him in the second half. You didn't like him before the season started.
Yeah, you only liked him when he wasn't good.
Scott might think Gunnar's a good buy, but also Scott was stupid for not liking Gunnar. And then what?
And you just bought an Otani at the wrong time because now he's just kidding.
There's no making Phil happy. It can't be done. It cannot be done.
Goodness.
Yeah, I still remember staring at a red ink, a Gunnar Henderson red ink on eBay for like $4.99 in like the year or in the winter before last season. So winter of 2023. And I was like, And I think I bought a Strider card instead. So I think about that card a lot because it's no longer a $500 card. That was a mistake.
It's hard. It's basically, it does feel like, so you know how when Mike Trout and Bryce Harper debuted at the same time, he debated between those two. And obviously they're both worth money. Trout's still worth quite a bit more. And then it feels even similar to Soto and Acuna in 2018. They were kind of the guys you compared, and now they're both worth money, but Soto's worth more. Now it's Gunnar and Bobby, and I do agree with Phil. The edge goes to Bobby strictly for, I think his ceiling is just plain higher. I don't think we've seen full Bobby Witt. Maybe we have offensively, but I don't think his whole game, like even on the base paths, he has a lot of caught stealing, I'm pretty sure still. And so my point is, like, he could improve things with his games and still be pretty solid. And so if I had to pick between the two, I think Bobby is the answer if I was investing in one. There is a relatively large age difference, though. Probably a year to 18 months. Is that substantial enough? Maybe if we miss 2027 with the strike.
I think it's, Scott, I think it's a year and 15 days.
Is it? So it's exactly a year. So it's one of those things where you can, I will like J-Rod. J-Rod's very interesting to me because he is also heading into his age 23 season, and he's had arguably a better career than these two so far. Not the last year, but like overall numbers. He has multiple top 5 MVP finishes and so forth. But all right, Ty, what do you think of these two players?
I make a case for like both of them. I know we're talking about Gunnar, but with Gunnar, the pro is that he's on a team that looks to have a path to the playoffs now if they do what they should do with all the hitting talent that they have, especially. I know there's some question marks around pitching, but with the blows to the Yankees pitching, and the doors open a little bit more, it seems like, for the Orioles. And I see them as more of a competitive playoff team than the Royals, though they were right there last year too, and just ultimately kind of choked late season. The good news with Witt is that he's the focal point of that team, whereas Gunnar's competing with all this young talent on the Orioles, tons of young talent and talent that still hasn't even come up yet. So Witt's kind of the guy. He's got the charisma. He's got the moxie. He loves the hobby. So there's just a lot of things going for him. And so I could see it, kind of going either way. Just popping into market movers, his Gunnar's cards over the last 6 months down overall about 8%. So more or less flat, not a lot of huge swings. And if I look at his PSA 10 Bowman Chrome auto, he is up obviously from like where he was a full year ago. He was at $420 on his PSA 10. That now most recently is at $690. But it peaked out at over $1,000 during the season. So, it's sometimes it's rare to see guys really go up in June. Like usually it's either like right out of the gate or late in the season toward a playoff push. In the case of Gunnar, it was his peak values were kind of heading into the heat of the summer. And then as we know, his performance started to slow down and his prices came down. But he's an interesting case. With he and Bobby both, I could just see them being the guys that both can have like monster seasons on any given year and really see their cards spike. So I don't see a problem, if I ever would have either of their cards, honestly.
I could see there being like a documentary 10 years from now about the trajectory of these two guys. And they met in the playoffs last year in the wild card round. And the Royals swept the Orioles out of there before the Yankees knocked out the Royals. But we might look back at that little brief 2-game series as kind of a butting of the heads of the two future, shortstop icons in the league.
Yeah.
And I will say one thing, Ty. I think the path to the postseason, like I know Orioles on paper are better, but they have a very hard division compared to the Royals, who have a very weak division. So I think the Royals' odds of the playoffs may be just as good at this point, just because the division's so much easier, and that gets them into the NLDS as well versus a wild card versus the Sox and Yankees. So
I wouldn't disagree that the AL Central is easier. I think
no offense to your Tigers.
I mean, last year you had basically 4 borderline or actual playoff teams out of that division.
But so yeah, no offense to the Tigers.
I'm just saying it's a good division. It's not I wouldn't say it's a weaker division. I personally
than the AL East.
Well, maybe not as much as you're letting on. That's what I would say.
AL East isn't as good as it used to be, but I'd say AL Central is about average.
Yeah,
there's worse divisions. AL Central.
This is Witt compared to Gunnar, about half the pop. Interesting.
About third of the price.
Yeah, that's a big 3x for Witt over Gunnar.
Yeah, that's a little bit more than I expected. I knew Witt was around 2K. I didn't know Gunnar was where he's at. I think he deserves a little more respect.
So maybe Scott isn't as stupid as you let on, Phil.
Hey, both those things could be true.
His prices went down since you last said you liked him, though. Ty just showed us that.
So let's jump into. Is that enough Witt conversation? We feeling good? Yeah. Sorry, Gunnar and Witt. Yeah. We'll talk about Witt next week too, believe it or not. But at number 9, we have for the AL Central fans of this podcast, I'm sorry for already offending you, but we have Jose Ramirez of the Cleveland Guardians. Number 9. Last year, he was number 14, just Mr. Consistent. I have some really crazy Jose Ramirez stats that we can look at just from his baseball reference page. He's just always good, and he stays relatively healthy. And he's had how many top 5 MVP finishes in the last few years? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of the last 7 years, he's top 10 MVP finisher, with 4 of those being top 5. So very impressive player. What are your thoughts on him, Ty?
At this point, I don't know that I'd say this for a lot of players. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but my gut reaction is it'd be good if he just rode out his career now with the Guardians. Like a lot of times I'd think somebody leaving the Guardians, going to a bigger market team would be good, but Cleveland fans absolutely love him. Now we talk all the time about his cards kind of being undervalued for how good he is. And that probably has a lot to do with him being in Cleveland, but much like, certain other players, I don't know, maybe a bad comparison, maybe not, Salvador Perez or others who just stay with the same team for a long time, smaller market team, smaller budget team, that can bode really well for the stability, I'll say, and at least slow appreciation of their card prices over time, because they're going to have a concrete dedicated fan base who want to go after their at least most significant cards. And in the case of J-Ram, he just doesn't have a ton of like high grade rookie stuff either.
He doesn't have any rookie stuff.
Yeah.
It's crazy. No Bowman Chrome autograph.
Right.
No Bowman Chrome first. He doesn't have a Bowman Chrome rookie. None of that. He has a Topps Chrome, finest, flagship, and that's basically it. So he does have some random National Treasures RPAs that go for a pretty good amount of money. But 6.8 WAR, 4.9 WAR, 5.9, 6.6. He was MVP runner-up in the shortened season. 3.07. Like, it's just, he's good. He's real good. What do you think of him, Chris?
He's a great player. He's, like you said, he's been great for 10 years. He's a top 10 fantasy pick every single year. He's really consistent, and nobody cares. Like, he's basically like the opposite of Bryce Harper, and that he has just been steadily good every single year, and his cards just really, they don't move. I think the only thing he could do to make people really take notice hobby-wise is get Cleveland a World Series. But outside of that, unless he maybe winning an MVP would do it, but he's got a real tough road for that. But at this point, like, there's nothing more he can do that we haven't seen. Like, he is a great baseball player, and the hobby just doesn't really care.
If he knocks out Tim Anderson again, maybe.
Yeah, maybe he's going to knock out someone else we don't like.
Start a secondary career in the UFC.
Yeah. Maybe if he knocks out Aaron Judge, a 6'6" guy. Maybe he needs, I'm just thinking, like, because he's little and Judge is tall, that'd be a hell of a visual.
What if he knocked out Shohei Ohtani? What would the Republic reaction be?
Oh, I would not be good. Yeah. Not be good.
So I want to show one thing real quick. While I'm pulling this up, Phil, what are your thoughts on him?
So I was looking at a J-Ram, and I'm like, all right, so he's in his 30s now, and this is sometimes when you start to see a decline with offensive players. I mean, J-Ram's listed at 5'9", I think 185 or something. So maybe he would start to, wear down a little bit. I did notice a 4-year decline in his chase rate year over year, but I think that is more of something that's intentional. He actually increased his bat speed last year too, from 2023 to 2024. He shortened his swing as well, and he put up the best max EV of his career, of his 10-year career last year, of 116.6. So
What's EV?
I don't exit velocity, maximum exit velocity. So 116.6, that's pretty good. That's like Rafael Devers territory. It's hard to see a decline coming from an offense perspective. Defense and speed have held up pretty well too. He's just becoming a little bit more aggressive, I think, with the chasing a little bit more outside the zone. And I agree with Chris, just like, or whoever brought it up, Scott. There's just not many cards he has, which is awesome if you want to buy into it. And actually, the pops are really low on stuff like his gold parallel, numbered out of 2014. I think it was from 2014 Series 2. I think there are around like 10 of those in PSA 10. I saw one at a show. I think a guy had 2 of them, and he told me what the pop was. That's in the territory. That's less than what Mike Trout has from 2011 update. That's close to like Pujols and Ichiro. Pop 4.
Yeah.
And the reason for it is he was not good in 2013 when he had his cup of coffee, and he was not good in 2014 or 2015. So that's why these cards are beat up. It's because nobody kept them in good condition. Plus, it was that era. So nobody was chasing Jose Ramirez.
And then you've got the issue with the Topps Chrome autographs where it's a crappy
So
autograph, but it's
freaky.
also super faded, streaky. So getting a good autograph too, that might be impossible. Maybe on the red ink, which we're numbered at 10.
Yep.
He had one of those, right?
So some of his best autographs are the base Topps Chrome autographs. He took his time. Any parallel, it's very hit or miss.
Okay.
There was a red ink that was for sale, and those ones they're like just missing. Like he didn't like finish his signature, or he did but didn't put it on the card. And so some of those I've looked at, but that bugs me. Maybe it shouldn't. So I can even show a couple examples of.
Yeah, no, his early auto is weird. There's like a ton of space between the letters, and it doesn't look like Jose or Ramirez.
It's just lines. Like that's actually a pretty good one.
Yeah, that one's not bad.
Yeah.
Compared to what he typically does. Let me find another one.
To give him a bad marker.
He was one home run shy of 40-40 last year.
And he didn't get his last game. They canceled it because it didn't matter. So they said, well, let's cancel. He didn't get his chance hit his 40th home run.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a tough thing. And one thing I do want to point out, where did I have it at? He's on a Hall of Fame path. He actually, WAR 7 is your best 7 seasons combined. Not what's in a row? There's a word I'm looking for. Not all of your best 7 seasons in a row, but total best 7 seasons. He is above the average Hall of Famer as of this year at 43.6. So he's had a Hall of Fame career peak. If you go to Jaws, which is your total WAR and your peak WAR, he has a little bit of work to do. He's at 47.7, has to get to 56.1. That feels inevitable. How do you guys feel about Jose Ramirez? This is a hot take, but I want to hear your thoughts. The best third baseman of his generation. Manny Machado, Nolan Arenado, and Jose Ramirez.
I got to put Machado first.
Okay, what if I said this is since 2014, his first full season versus Machado?
Yeah, I'd still say Machado.
I don't know.
It's close. I mean, I think Jose Ramirez maybe a little better offensively, but Machado's defense definitely better.
JRM was a second baseman too for.
That's true.
Years.
Yeah.
So,
and Machado played some short, didn't he?
Right. Yep. A little bit.
Did he play short, J-Ram?
A little bit.
Lindor was playing it from 2015.
Machado played.
Yes, he started as a shortstop. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, I just think statistically, it's a very similar career.
Yeah, absolutely. Very similar.
Yeah. I think Ty's right. I think if he stays on the Guardians, sort of like the Joey Votto effect, you just slowly accrue more and more collectability.
Yeah.
Even if your stats kind of don't get better, they stay the same.
Speaking of, Chris said nobody cares about Jose. One person for sure.
Oh, you're right. Sean O'Meter cares so much.
Sean, I don't know how you say it, but it's he loves it. He's got all the cards.
There's the red ink right there. Can you click on that red ink, Ty?
Yeah. You'll see what I'm talking about. How he kind of just doesn't really finish his autograph. There's like dots. Can you zoom in?
Like wispies it. I don't know.
I don't know if you can zoom in on Instagram. You can see he kind of just like misses spots. It's very interesting.
The 11 is pretty clear, but yeah. But he could retire as I'm trying to think. Like he can't be the Guardians. Like he could probably retire with some career Guardians records, right? I mean, I assume Tommy probably has a lot of the power numbers, but maybe he could retire as like the Guardians career leader in like runs and stuff like that. I'm not sure who might hold those records. I'm trying to think who has been there the longest. But
this is such a good photo.
Yeah, that card's awesome.
Yeah.
Next up at number 8, we have Freddie Freeman. Maybe we just give Chris like 3 minutes and he could just say how all of the great stats that he knows at the top of his head and how great Freddie is. But World Series MVP, probably one of the most iconic home runs in the history of Major League Baseball. I don't think that's dramatic to say. On top of that, he's really separated himself from everybody, including Goldschmidt, Votto, every other first baseman of the 2010s with his performance in LA, his aging curve. Freddie's great. I think he's starting to get a lot of value. I think he still needs to maintain health. That's my only thing for him in order to get to 3,000 hits. And if he does that, he's got it made in the shade for Freddie Freeman, in my opinion. What do you think, Chris?
Well, so someone else should talk about Freddie Freeman.
You're a Braves fan.
Yeah, Freddie's amazing. What can you say about him? He's up 18% in the last 6 months on his cards. He had obviously a huge spike during that playoff run into the World Series and after. So his cards went crazy, and he's a hitting machine. He does it year over year. I mean, I wish he had stuck with the Braves, and I like Olsen, but he had a down year last year, and he's no Freddie. So Wish
That
he
has
was
to
still
hurt as a
here.
Braves fan, doesn't it? That whole how that all played out. Would you rather have Freddie right now, or are you cool with Olsen? That's the question for the bottom two of you.
No, of course we'd rather have Freddie. He's our guy. I love Matt Olson. Matt Olson is great, but I mean, Freddie's agents literally screwed.
Yeah.
They screwed an entire fan base, and they pissed him off. He fired them. No one's happy when they fire their agents. No one signs a new deal and then fires their agents because they're really happy with how it all went down.
Yeah,
but it is what it is. At this point, we have to just accept it.
But now you got to watch the Dodgers. You like Ohtani, you like Mookie, you like Freddie. That's kind of like your new favorite team.
It's annoying. Plus, my dad loves them, so I mean, I watch a lot of their games, and it's annoying. They're just collecting players I like.
Who did you watch more of in 2024? Dodgers or Braves?
I felt like I was like almost, I don't know, like torture watching the Atlanta Braves. Like it was like I was punishing myself. It was hard. I'm watching like whatever makeshift lineup they could throw together on a nightly basis, and then usually by the fifth inning, someone that I'm emotionally invested in has left in a stretcher. And it was a horrible, horrible season. And honestly, I would actually feel better. Their games would end, and then the Dodgers games would start. And usually within the first 10 minutes, like, Ohtani's homered. So I would start to feel better as my night progressed.
Ty and I get it as Rockies and Tigers fans. We get the pain. Okay. All right, Phil, what do you think of Mr. Frederick?
A little bit different of a take. 3 years in a row with under 30 homers. He already got the Hall of Fame bump. Not entirely. I still think there's points in time where people forget about Freddie Freeman, and then he tears it up and he gets somewhat of like the Bryce Harper treatment where he gets a ton of attention and his price is like, oh yeah, I forgot about Freddie Freeman. So the aging curve is looking good on him, even despite the 3 years without 30 home runs. He's probably not the best.
Doubles, baby.
Doubles. Yeah, he's still in the ball hard, even though he only swings like 69 miles an hour, which is way below average. But it's probably not the best short-term play, in my opinion. But postseason heroics are possible. Hot streaks are possible. He could still have a really good year. He could still finish top 3 in MVP. Is he going to win it? I don't think so. But he could win World Series MVP. Few rookie cards, so that puts him in a good spot automatically too.
The Dodgers have 3 players who could finish top 3 MVP voting in any order. It's very interesting. Must be nice to be a Dodgers fan. But age 35 season next year, so we could start to see a natural decline. We saw it wasn't as good of a year last year. I thought that going in to show you this. He still had a great year. 22 home runs. Yeah. He was hurt. He had to deal with his kids having stuff going on.
Yeah, his second half. He had a second half decline. His second half was the first half with a sub 800 OPS he's had in like 10 years. But yeah, there were a lot of extracurricular circumstances, we'll say.
Yeah, I do agree with Bill though. The big bump on his cards has already happened. The big bump, right? We've all of us had Freddie Freeman cards. They're already way up. I don't know what he can do from now on to have them go up again at the same rate. I don't really think it's possible. That boat sailed in 2023, I'd argue. Yeah. So
it is interesting. I pointed this out on Blabin. I just want to say this before. He is the active leader in hits, doubles, runs, and RBIs. So think about the career Mike Trout has had. Freddie Freeman has 4 counting numbers better than him.
They debuted the same year too.
Yep.
Okay. With that being said, how long is his contract? 2 years more? Is he going back to the Braves for one last farewell tour, you think?
I would bet a lot on that, yes.
Retire a Brave, I think.
He may go back with 3 rings as a Dodger, but I would bet the house that he goes back, finishes his career there.
I'd take the under on that too. I don't gamble. So the over or under. What do you take?
Over?
Over.
Yeah, because you're betting on probability.
You think it's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So with that being said, next up is Yordan Alvarez. This is a very intriguing one at number 7. It feels pretty high to me, to be fully transparent, for Yordan. But am I just a hater? I like Yordan. And I've been looking at his cards. It's just they're still a little expensive for what he profiles in the injury history. What do you think of Yordan, Ty?
Pull up his stats, because that seems very high to me.
Number 7.
Recent memory.
He had a good year. He had a good year.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's hard to put a guy who's going to DH 100 games ahead of Gunnar Henderson.
That's what I would have put Gunnar ahead of him. I would have put Jose Ramirez ahead of him, both of them. But
yeah, him over Gunnar feels kind of. I don't hit a 172 OPS plus, 308 batting average with 35 home runs. He needs to have more home runs than that. I think we all agree with that statement.
Yeah. Those OPS pluses are pretty impressive the last 3 years.
What does he need to do to really have value? A 1.1 season? Is that what he's missing at this point? Health? He played 147 games.
Well, that's the weird thing, is he played 147 games. That's the most in his career, and yet I didn't remember him playing 140. I like, if you had asked me, I'd been like, I don't know, 120. It felt like he missed time last year, but maybe that's just
Yeah, he needs that gaudy season. He needs that 140 RBI season to really get it.
He needs like a Judge-esque type season just one time. I think that's what he's missing.
Yeah,
which he can do.
Yeah, he definitely can. But his RBIs went down. It's not the be all end all stat, but it's one that it's in the box score and people look at it. He had like a career high in games, I think, or 140 plus games. He knocked in 80 runs, 86 runs.
Let's see how much opportunity he had, shall we, real quick? While I'm doing that, Phil, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he's a stud. He can be the best offensive player in the game at any given time. And we started to see that a little bit more probably a few years ago. He needs to be on the field for at least 150 games. Can that happen? I think he's going to play a little bit less left field now. Maybe Cam Smith can kind of help that situation a little bit. Maybe we'll talk about him in one of the future episodes, or actually one that might come before this one. His strikeout rate is actually, Yordan's strikeout rate has decreased each of the last 3 seasons. So it's gone from 24% to 15%. So he's becoming a better hitter, making more contact. But yeah, the 40 plus home run season, where's that going to come? And also, so I made a comment on a recent episode about his knees. So he injured his knee last year. He didn't miss that much time. It was one of the last series of the year. He injured his knee on a slide in late September. And we found out like there's a lot of like positive news about how he's good to go for spring training. He didn't get surgery, but there's an article from February that states there was a lot of damage, but he decided not to undergo surgery. It's very vague, but it does say a lot of damage. I'm pretty sure. Like that's an actual quote. So be cautious. And also he has a lot of rookies in 2020.
Yes, he has so many rookie cards. Like he has so many rookie cards. It's unreal. You can go find probably 51 of one rookie cards of his right now on eBay. 50, maybe a lot. At least 20 right now.
Yeah, it feels like he missed the whatever the top's cutoff is. I think he missed it by like 40 minutes or something.
Yeah, and then they held him and then blew him up.
2019.
But with Tucker and Bregman gone now, does Yordan's fandom within the Astros fan base go up? We had a lot of good comments about Tucker in the comments last time. I would think it kind of just puts even more focus into him and people wanting him to continue to be good.
I think so, because he already has the postseason resume. He already has a World Series. I think he's going to be a fan favorite. I don't think the Astros are going to let him walk unless the injury is worse than said. Then they might, if they know the physical. I think he'll grow up. I want to point this out. He had 115 at-bats with runners in scoring position. Judge had 128, so not that many more. But Judge had 76 RBI and a 1.2 OPS versus Yordan's 44 RBI and a 918 OPS. So that was one of his worst hitting situations of the year. He was really bad with runners in scoring position. When I say really bad, still a 918, but this TOPS is representative of like if he did better or worse in a situation. So he's 96th, 96 overall. So he's actually 4% worse than what he usually is with runners in scoring position, for what it's worth. So random stats. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's Yordan. So his cards, what needs to happen? A Judge-esque offensive season, a Frank Thomas-esque offensive season. Is that what he needs? Just one of those? Jeff Bagwell is probably a better example. He had a great.
Yeah, he's got to blow up. He's got to give us like triple-digit RBIs, like 130 RBIs and 40 home runs because it's in there. And it looks like if Altuve's been playing some left field. I've seen this spring. I don't know. It seems like there has to be more to that than just Altuve having one bad defensive season at second base. Because I've seen some highlights and it's bad. It looks like Marcelo Zuna out there without any throwing arm.
A really tiny
Marcelo
Zuna.
Yeah. So I don't really know if that's about protecting Yordan as much as it is about moving Altuve off second base. I don't know.
I agree. All right, last player, Francisco Lindor, number 6. I think that's a great place for Lindor. I mean, I would not be surprised this year if he is made. I've heard rumblings of him becoming the captain for the Mets. I have no issues with that. I don't think any Mets fans will have issues with that. He has a lot of big moments now for them, some huge moments in 2024. But best year of his career last year. He had a higher WAR in 2018, but offensively, he was amazing. He had a 30-30 season last year, which people forget. But this last year, he had 33 home runs, 29 stolen bases, hit 273 with a 138 OPS plus, while being, in my opinion, a top 3 glove in the American League. So he didn't win the Gold Glove, but he absolutely could have. Sorry, the National League. Forgive me. But with that being said, what do you think of him? Let's hear your thoughts, Chris.
I think he's in a perfect spot. Of all these guys, I feel like this might be the guy whose cards could jump the most of these 5.
Yeah.
The Mets are spending. They should be good. They should continue to be good. And he is the centerpiece of that team. Paired with Soto, it should be, he's got at least 3 or 4 years of his prime left.
Yeah.
I like him a lot. As a Braves fan, I kind of hate facing him, but he has 2 of the biggest hits in Mets history.
Yeah.
He had those last year. I mean, we're going to see Freeman's grand slam was the biggest hit of the year, but Lindor's grand slam was one of the biggest hits in Mets history. It was awesome. I enjoyed watching the Phillies get their asses kicked right there. That was satisfying. But yeah, I like Lindor a lot, and I think it'd be a great season to have some big Lindor cards. Phil, I'm looking in your direction.
Hey, I already sold most of mine to Phil, but luckily I still have one left over.
Yeah, and I sold all my Lindor cards, so all the ones that Scott gave me, and I don't feel great about it. If you look at his baseball savant page, last year was a bit of an outlier. There's a lot more red than the 2 years prior, but to everybody else's point here, I think he's probably still underrated. The Mets offense is going to be good. So putting Soto into an already good lineup that was 4th in the National League in homers and 5th in runs, it's going to be scary what that team can do if they stay healthy. And to give context on how expensive his cards are. So his gold Bowman Chrome auto in a decent grade from 2011 can be had for about $2,700, which is more than most prospects. You know, we all talk about how prospects are overvalued, but it's not more than Jack Caglione.
Bobby Witt's base PSA 10 is $2,000. So you can spend $700 more and get a Lindor.
I would say that Lindor price sounds really close to like Marcelo Mayer right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
But Lindor jumped a ton last year, by the way, because he was one of my picks to click, and I was luckily right. I just sold a lot of it to Phil early to buy the Goldschmidt, and I sold that Goldschmidt. Hint, secret. If you want to know more about that, sign up for our Patreon. But with that being said,
but to give people actionable advice on that, Lindor, has he ever been an all-star? So he's
in Cleveland, he's had quite a few. I think he had 3 or 4 all-star appearances.
So he's a very slow starter. So just he hasn't been an all-star with the Mets.
Yeah.
Okay. He started out last year like 5 or 51, and that's when Scott and I did the deal. You were probably watching him, so maybe you were a little biased by the eye test or something. I wasn't. I was just like, walk rate's still good. He probably looked horrible though.
He did look terrible, but that's not the main reason I sold. But he looked terrible, horrible.
True,
and then all of a sudden he was great second half.
Yeah, so he's a guy that could start slow. So maybe April, May could be a good time to buy him. But we said that about Soto, and then he started out really hot last year. So you never really know how these guys are going to start.
But last year, Lindor's gold Bowman Chrome autograph, Ty could even shows his market movers, but it was like $1,200 heading into the season. BGS 9.5 gold.
Yes, there was one at the Burbank show preseason. I think you ended up buying the one Jeff and I were looking at. It was like $1,400, I think.
Yep. That was from 7th inning.
Yep.
But I do want to show just one stat. Ty, what are your thoughts on Lindor while I pull this stat up?
He's one that I honestly like. I guess, we see him leave Cleveland and go to the Mets and how good that's been for his cards. So we were talking about J-Ram staying with Cleveland. And, you think if Lindor were still on Cleveland, he definitely wouldn't be getting the love that he is on his card prices, even if his stats were the same or even potentially better. He just wouldn't. No. So that's definitely helped him getting a change of scenery. It is wild to see somebody go MVP 9 twice and MVP 2 with 2 Silver Sluggers in the last 3 years and not having been an all-star. That's wild. So
Bobby Witt Jr. and Gunnar Henderson in your I said, please cut that, Bill.
AL again.
Golly gee, what am I smoking?
That shows you how Lindor is a big second half player. Random Braves fact: Chipper Jones was not an all-star in 1999 when he won his MVP.
Wow.
So it just all-star selection is super weird.
Yeah,
I did just want to point out Lindor before you pull up whatever you want to pull. He and Jose Ramirez should both, barring injury, they should both score their 1,000th career run this season.
Wow!
And usually round numbers like that will get someone's name in the headlines for a couple of days. Could help card values. It's a nice round number.
I have some Lindor stats. I really like Lindor in some ways. The first one, he's on pace to become the all-time home run leader for a shortstop. Pretty easily, actually. But if we look at his WAR through his age 30 season.
If he only plays shortstop, you mean?
The only play shortstop.
Like not going to pass
only at the shortstop position. Yeah. The leader right now is Cal Ripken Jr. at like 410, 420. But Lindor, through his age 30 season, has the 3rd highest F4 in the history of Major League Baseball since integration at 54.2, only behind Ripken and A-Rod, above Ernie Banks, Trammell, Yount, Jeter, everybody else. So That's pretty cool. And then on top of that, if we sort it by home, 400 and how many did Cal Ripken end up with? So he's the leader at
Ripken hit a lot at 3rd. right?
Say that again.
I said Ripken hit a whole bunch of home runs at third base too, didn't he? I mean, A-Rod's got to be the shortstop for actually playing the position. I know Ernie Banks hit a lot at first base.
Ripken Jr.
Oh, is it? Okay.
As a
Wait,
shortstop.
that's hits.
353. He'll pass that so easily. Less than almost only 100 home runs away. So he will be the all-time shortstop.
Yeah.
Whether that's a stat that matters or not, up to you. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I can't read that number. How many does A-Rod have as a shortstop?
345.
Okay.
Ernie Banks is 298. Miguel Tejada's 285. Jeter's 260. Lindor's 248. So he'll easily get there as long as he stays healthy. But I want to say one thing for Mets fans. Prior to this year, Lindor had a ton of criticism for not being as good as advertised, especially because his first year was not good. Maybe it was his first year and a half. So he's had a rough go, and he really had to earn his love in that city. So he's really worked hard at it, and it's good to see his cards go up. I'm happy for him. I really am. So
that chart you showed of the most home runs by shortstops and talking about Witt and Gunnar and others, even Corey Seager and other, that's kind of just shows how much the position has evolved too.
Absolutely.
With power, right? Shortstop just was never a power position, and now all of a sudden you got these guys coming out and regularly hitting 25 to 40 home runs at that spot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, legitimately, would Ozzie Smith have had a career if he debuted like last year?
Would Omar Vizquel?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a great question.
I mean,
No answer.
Jose
Yeah,
Iglesias
throw it
has
out
been
there.
playing.
Well, people in the comments, let us know what you think about that.
Let us know in the comments down below. That is our preview of these players. Let us know who you're the most high on. And other than that, we will see you in the next episode.